Ask you to join us, mate. Just come in, grab a chair. We're all friends here. So 8 investment potential companies for you, and there's some really good ones. We're going to start with a particularly big one, though. And look, there's a lot of talk about lithium, but lithium projects of the size that we're about to speak about now don't come around that often. And we're having to travel for this one. We're travelling overseas and we're going to Quebec. And the man that's going to come up and have a chat with us about it should be well known to the majority of you in the room, especially if you've followed the fortunes of Burley Minerals, correct? Who's followed Burley? All right, so this gentleman here who's going to make his way very slowly to the front, building a sense of anticipation as he moves to talk with us, of course, is their MD. And he only joined them back in August 22. And I did make the faux pas of asking Mr. Brinsden, was this your project? Did you start it? And he said, I just saw it. It was just in its infancy. And I thought, knowing what I know from my experience with Burley and other projects, that this has real potential, this has real legs. So we know there's a massive market in North America. We know there's a massive market in Europe for lithium. Could this be the project that is plugging some of that supply and could do something amazing for our investment portfolios? Let's find out. Would you welcome the gentleman himself? Let's talk Patriot Battery Minerals. Patriot Battery Metals.
Well, thank you, Christina, and you could do the presentation on my behalf. I think you've pretty much captured it all in a nutshell there. Very, very nice to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of familiar faces in the room, so thank you very much for joining, and a big shout out to everyone that's online that's already a Patriot shareholder or been the journey with Burley Minerals. Thanks very much for paying attention to what we're up to. So today, in the time that we have available, I'll give you a little bit of the down-to-earth reasoning as to why it's so compelling to watch what's happening at Patriot and our Corvette project. A little bit about the development pathway and some of the important pieces of work that we have underway to continue to progress the project. Lots and lots of value to be added there. But perhaps most of all, and the bit that I really love, a bit about why lithium and why it's compelling and the links to the future of the lithium game. Because, you know, you might argue at the moment, there is a little bit of angst out there. You know, what's going on with the lithium price? What's happening with respect to demand? And I feel like there might be some valuable inputs to share with you about, you know, the future of the market and at least the direction that I think it's going to take. So Patriot Battery Metals, an early mover in the James Bay region in Quebec, and we tied up, I think, probably the best greenstone belt. And fortunately, with the drilling that's been done to date, that is absolutely the case. For those of you that don't know my history, I was involved in the development of the Pilgangoora project with Burley Minerals. And when I first got involved there, I think it's fair to say that I knew not much about the lithium game. But when I looked at the geology, albeit with my mining engineer's lens on, I thought this thing has got some serious scale. And what unfolded in the subsequent 7 years was some good news, some not such great news about the lithium game, but the absolutely consistent piece in that was that Pilgangoora delivered incredible scale. And when I first got exposed to what was happening with Patriot and the early drilling, honestly, I was having flashbacks to, you know, laying the geological maps out on the kitchen table and thinking to myself, this geology has got some serious scale in it as well, and therefore we should pay attention to what they're up to. Roll forward, I don't know, 6 or 9 months, and it started to turn into a lot more personal involvement and a bit of passion about what could be done with that Corvette discovery. So that's what got me involved. The good news is, as we've continued to drill, it's actually only got better, I think. The drilling is proving that the original intent, this geology is going to support significant scale, and that was all culminated culminated in the maiden resource. Nobody prints a 110 million tonne maiden resource in the lithium game that Patriot has. And it's motivated by that unbelievable geology. The host is really, really strong. So I've no doubt, there is no doubt in my mind that if you keep drilling at Corvette, you are going to keep turning up a lot more tonnes, because it's one of those rare pegmatite hosts that has the strong spodumene presence, very, very large crystal structure, open geology that supports really big, thick intercepts that contribute to a lot more tonnes. So yeah, we've got a lot more work to do for sure, but that additional drilling is going to translate to additional resource, and ultimately, of course, we would hope more pit inventory. So there it is in plan. The maiden resource, it's about 3.7 kilometres, but in the intervening period, we've kept drilling, actually both directions. We've kept drilling to the east and the west of the main lode being CV5. And in our announcements, subsequent to the presentation of the first resource, we've demonstrated that it continues. So of course, our expectation is that that resource is going to grow. But CV5 is part of a much broader system because Patriot was an early mover in the James Bay region and in Quebec. We were able to tie up the best pieces of geology. So there's about 50 kilometres of greenstone there, for which intermittently there is outcrops of spodumene concentrate. We can see the spodumene crystals in the outcrop, and we're going to keep drilling them. So again, just points to that whole concept around significant scale and the ability to keep drilling and keep growing the resource. So over the coming weeks and months, you'll see us present more information in the public domain about that western section on your screen to the left of CV5, heading towards CV13. And that's all going to form part of the future development strategy for the Corvette project, growth in resource, and as I said, ultimately, growth in the pit inventory. It's a pretty amazing system, and I've no doubt there's a lot more to come. Now, if you're going to build a lithium mine, you have to keep in perspective what it is that's going to support the mine's development, and that means you've got to start a chemical conversation. So the lithium world it's an industrial mineral. You're not delivering a gold bar to a plane or a van. You have to think about where that concentrate is going to go. Now, the good news about the North Americas, and I'll come to the broader market development a little bit later, is that there is an intense focus now on getting that chemical capacity in place. In the knowledge that we have a big position in the North Americas, as you would expect, there's a lot of corporate interest about how we can link our future mining capacity to that chemical capacity, but in particular with a view to getting product into the North Americas and into Europe. And some of that has culminated in the relationship with Albemarle. Albemarle is one of the big ticket names in the lithium chemicals world, and they're a big mover in development capacity for Western markets, so in particular North America and Europe. So we've started a relationship with them, given them a minority position, or they bought into a minority position in Patriot, but we're basically kickstarting that chemical conversation, the one that says we're going to link our future mine capacity to new chemical capacity for the North Americas and Europe. So it's a really important step in the development of the company, and given the scale that we expect to emerge at Corvette over time, there's going to be a lot more chemical conversations that hopefully our shareholders can take advantage of. In the development timeline, we do get the odd person that wants to poo-poo approvals in Quebec, but to me, by my observation, it's French-speaking Western Australia, basically. Quebec is is a great mining community. Lots and lots of mines, diverse mining interests, a strong framework within which both the mines are approved and in parallel establishing First Nations agreements. So to my mind, those people that say a mine development in Quebec is 7-10 years away, not at all, far from it. In fact, I think you can develop mining interests there in not that dissimilar a timeline to the one you can in WA. Now, the catch is you don't want to take any shortcuts, you have to do high quality work. But on the assumption that you've done that, you're going to get a mine up in good order. At Pilgangoora, it took us about 4 years. In Quebec, by my observation today, I don't think it's really that dissimilar. Similar sort of timeline, and actually we're already a couple of years down the track. So to my mind, readily achievable and actually a great mining jurisdiction to be a part of. So we'll keep you posted, keep all of our shareholders posted as to how all that progresses. Okay, in the time left, some of the really interesting stuff about how the market is developing. And as I said, it's probably been a bit of a confusing time for shareholders in the lithium scene, because you've seen lithium pricing come off pretty extreme highs, and as a result, equities being impacted on a commensurate basis. Well, what I want to explain is some of the sort of underlying dynamics about the industry and where it's come from, but perhaps more importantly, where it's heading to. So the key driver is China, and it has been pretty much for the last decade. Mines that you've seen developed in Western Australia, they were motivated because there was a ready market in China for concentrate capacity. The average WA spodumene mine delivers its concentrate to China, and then it's subsequently upgraded and sold as lithium raw chemicals, value-added lithium chemicals from the raw materials. China did an amazing job, and is still doing an amazing job, building the chemicals and battery supply chain. What they didn't do was get the mining capacity right, and that's why you've seen pretty incredible spikes in pricing for the raw materials. And we probably shouldn't be surprised by that. But the truth is, now, from here, pretty much the 2020s, exactly the same thing is happening in the Western world. Masses of chemical capacity are going to be built in the Western world, or already under construction, including North America, including Australia, but the same mistake is being made. There is a lot more chemical capacity being built than there is underlying raw material capacity. And my take is that you will get similar effects emerge over time as to what happened in the last decade. There will be incredible price spikes in raw materials, because it's the raw material that's going to be short in the market, not the chemical capacity, not the cell making capacity. And then in terms of EV making capacity, well, it's kind of already underway. The game is changing, consumers are switched on to the EVs, and it's now going to happen as a matter of course. The leader is China, and you can see the growth that's going on there. That's some data, and it's very recent data out of China sales, year-on-year growth in the order of 30%, and it has been pretty much for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, there's another layer to the effect of China, which gets to the key point in my presentation. How does North America respond? China absolutely dominates the lithium battery world. They represent about 70% of the capacity from chemicals onwards, not the raw materials, but from the chemicals onwards. And they've invested unbelievably heavily in EV making capacity. And in the last 2 or 3 years, they've taken off with exports of EVs to the rest of the world. So in the last couple of months, you might have heard that Europe's now complaining about Chinese product landing in Europe, and actually they're dominating because they've got a high quality product that's competitively priced. and they're selling like hotcakes. In fact, you can see it here in Australia too. I don't know how many of you have noticed the BYD EVs driving around now. Well, think about that in Europe. That's on steroids. So now you've got the Europeans bitching and moaning about this competition that's come into their market from China. Well, honestly, zero sympathy, because you guys were asleep at the wheel in the last decade. You didn't do enough to compete in the EV world. And now China's absolutely cutting your lunch. Well, you've only got yourselves to blame. Now, why would I reflect on that? Well, it gets to the next step. The next step is, how does the West respond? And the good news is the response is underway. So it's happening as we speak. The IRA is a really good example. And it's going to motivate a completely different level of response for what's required in raw materials. As I said, last decade was about China. This decade is about the West. Patriot is incredibly well placed to be a key participant with a mine of scale, deeply integrated into that North American and European supply chain. And hopefully you guys would all like to be a part of it. So thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Brinsden. Appreciate that one. The journalists are racing out to file their stories now as we speak. Don't miss this next one. Actually, where did one fellow go? There was a fellow here with dark shades on a moment ago. I thought Nicolas Cage may have joined us in the room. He was seen at one of the little Asian eateries just down the road here. It's very exciting, isn't it? He's wandering around the place. But why would you wear a leather jacket and dark shades when it's 30 degrees? Because you're not exactly going to draw attention away from yourself. You're going to stand out a little bit, I reckon. All right, we're going to move from lithium and we're going to go to gold. So up next on stage is Hamelin Gold. Now, I ask all of our presenters, not for the background on them, but why it is that we as investors want to stay in this room. What is it about your presentation, in this case, Pete Bewick, what is it about your presentation that's going to keep us sitting here? So Pete and his brain tank, they went away and they came up with a headline that said, Frontier Explorers in search of Australia's next great gold discovery. And I thought, it's good, that's all right. And he said it to me, and there was a group of other presenters out there and they went, oh yeah, where are you exploring, Pete, exactly? And he's going, oh, Tanami. And they're going, oh yeah, that's got legs. That's got definite legs. And he's going, well, I don't want to say it's a Tanami because I don't want to restrict us because we've got these other great... Would you welcome him to tell us about it, please? Pete Bewick, everyone, and Hamelin Gold.
Thanks for the intro, Chrissy, and thanks very much to Jackson and the team here for the opportunity to give you an update on the Hamelin Gold story. Hamelin's next month celebrates its second birthday, and I'm done already? Man, that's quick. And since we've been listed, we've been focusing on our flagship project, which is the West Tanami, located up in the far northeast of Western Australia. It's a belt scale project, 2,500 square kilometres, within very much a tier 1 gold province. We've also more recently found some nickel, copper, PG intrusive related mineralisation, but today I'll focus on the gold story. So what I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about the company, how we're going about our exploration and some of the results we've been putting to market. So I'll introduce you to the company, myself, a geologist by trade, joined by Justin Osborne on the board, and along with Clayton Davies, our exploration manager. We've had a few years exploring for orogenic gold in Western Australia. We've not quite 100, but not far off it. On the board with us, William Robinson is the Managing Director of successful Greenfields explorer Encounter Resources and comes from a commercial background, and Philip Crutchfield, a King's Counsel based in Melbourne, previous chairman of Zipco. So a pretty well-rounded and experienced board. And when you want to look at what the Hamelin Gold future looks like, or what our strategy looks like, you really don't have to go too far from what Justin and the team at Gold Road achieved through exploration discovery. They're a junior explorer, took a large land position in a well-endowed gold field or gold province, made a multi-million ounce gold discovery and took that junior explorer to a $2 billion company that it is today. And we think that that's the sort of growth we might see in our exploration and our market cap through exploration success. So very much leveraged to success. Today, we're a small company, $13 million market cap with 6 in the bank. We're really very much leveraged to exploration success. A junior explorer is a little bit different to some. We've got two major shareholders on our register, Silver Resources and Goldfields, and we certainly appreciate their support for our work up in the Tanami. So here we are, right on the Northern Territory WA border. People think it's remote. It sure is. It's the place, it's one of the last great frontiers of gold exploration, I think, in Australia. It's a 100-kilometre long contiguous land holding, and we're located pretty well 100 k's west-northwest of the giant Newmont operations, Tanami operations. Now we're on the same structures, same geology. We're not having to reinvent the model here, but Callie and the Dead Bullock Soak system is truly world-class. It's a top 5 gold producer in Australia, producing over 500,000 ounces per annum. It's the #1 gold producing company in the world, Newmont. It's their lowest cost per ounce gold production, so it's arguably their best operation, and it's got a 2040 mine life. So it's got lots of legs remaining, and they're adding ounces for fun there. It's the sort of deposit that you definitely want to find. And it's odd in the Tanami that there's a giant there, but there's not another long sort of string of 5 to 10 million or 2 to 5 million ounce discoveries. There's a big gap there, which you don't see in any other orogenic belt in the world. There should be a distribution of multiple million ounce discoveries along that area. There's a couple of good deposits, but really not that 5 or 2 million ounce type system. And we certainly think that's what the potential is up here in the Tanami. And why do we think it's still there? If you've never done the drive down the Tanami Road, which, you know, it's for the brave, this is a tough part of the world to explore. It's dominantly sand covered. Most of the time we're talking about 2 to 5 metres, so it's not a lot of sand, but it's enough to get that prospecting and that traditional geochemistry almost ineffective in this part of the world. So most of the work done by previous explorers has been where there's been isolated outcrops come to surface, and a lot of work has been done in those areas. But as soon as you go under sand, they haven't been able to follow those systems and target in those areas. So we're very much focused on how do we explore undercover and applying new technologies. And we've been focused on two main things: prediction and detection. So prediction is literally, can you put an X on the map where you think a gold deposit might be? And we've been doing major surveys to get the detailed magnetic coverage, getting some gravity coverage in the area, really basic nuts and bolts stuff that previous explorers didn't have. And we've also been working on our ability to detect. So can we use new technologies to look through that sand cover and try and identify the mineral system that we're looking for? And one of the ones I'll talk to you about today is the CSIRO developed ultrafine fraction soils, which is really giving us a potential window into a valuable and very powerful new exploration tool. So here we are. These are the projects that we've worked on this year. It's 10 of the 10 targets that we've been either doing geochemical and mostly drilling on, and some of them we've seen drilling for the very first time. I'm not going to go through all 10, but I'd like to show you 3 examples which give you a bit of an idea of what we're learning and how we're going about our exploration. And those 3 areas are the Sultan project up to the north, where we've applied the fine fraction soil work, the Newkirk area, which is an area where we've looked at the use of pathfinders to try and vector into the core of the gold systems, and the Fremlins area, which is a fascinating insight into, if you don't know your regolith, you might be doing a lot of ineffective drilling. So I'll tell you go through those 3 examples. So Sultan, this is a magnetic image. This is an area where there was a subtle gold anomaly. We spudded a EIS, so a government co-funded drill hole, which, for want of a better word, was a bit of a shot from the hip. We were trying to learn about it was a stratigraphic drill hole, trying to learn about the geology, trying to see what we could see under this gold anomaly. And we successfully intersected a pretty high-grade gold structure, 7 metres at 3 grams, with a core of almost half an ounce in the middle there. And when it wasn't really that well targeted, this was a pretty, big step forward. The key structure, that Sultan fault, we can trace over 10 kilometres of strike. So the next question was, how do we explore this vast area without going broke drilling deep diamond holes? And this is an area where we trialled the CSIRO developed fine fractions. Now, we'd been doing multiple orientations and trials across the project, and we found that this system was probably the most reliable and repeatable. So we targeted this area, a 4-kilometre strike area to the west. I can tell you there's not an effective geochem sample, and there's no drilling in that box other than the drilling that we completed on our first section. So very much a virgin discovery. That fine fraction work was phenomenal. It generated a 1 kilometre, that far western target generated a 1 kilometre long coherent gold anomaly that sits smack bang on a major flexure in that Salton fault. Almost textbook. And whilst the central anomaly is still coherent, it's a lower magnitude anomaly, but this is the sort of ability, and if we can follow this up with successful drilling and prove there is bedrock gold under this golden target, we really have confirmed a powerful new tool for the Tanami. To give you an idea, that anomaly we announced on the 26th of September last month. We completed heritage monitoring in the days following. We got a rig mobilised from Perth and completed 67 holes over that target less than 15 days after we announced the geochem anomaly. So those that do say Tanami is a pretty tough place to operate, sometimes if you get organised, it's not a bad place to operate at all. So a great job by the drilling company to get up there, and also our team to get that job done. So those assays are very keenly awaited. The other thing, looking at pathfinders in the Tanami, and one pathfinder element that a lot of people focused on was arsenic. Previous explorers thought arsenic and gold were 1 for 1. When you plot up the database, I don't want to go into the mathematics, but basically there's no correlation between the two. They're probably following the same structures, but there's not a close association between gold and arsenic. When you look at some other pathfinder elements like bismuth, there is a phenomenal association, almost to the point where you don't get bismuth without gold and you don't get gold without bismuth. So diagrammatically, what this means is if we're looking for one of these things out there in the desert, it's not going to look like this. It's going to look far more like this area, which is the sort of the X-ray of the area. What we find out there is gold is dominantly a depleted signature in the regolith. So you get a really weak, subtle gold anomaly, usually coherent but subtle. But the core of the animal, the skeleton, the bismuth, is far more stable in the regolith. So you end up with quite sensational, good bismuth numbers in amongst this cloud of low-grade gold. And one area where we tested this just very recently was our Newkirk target, a 1.5 kilometre long gold with strong bismuth anomalism. There's never been a drill hole down to the basement here. We've done the first drilling of this only 3 weeks ago. And and again, still waiting for assays, so anything's possible. But what we're starting to look at is maybe where the best bismuth is potentially where the best gold in the primary might be. So we're waiting again for those results with real interest. The last area I'd like to quickly talk about in the last few minutes is our Fremlins project. Now, I mentioned before that gold doesn't sort of hang around in the profile here very well, but this is quite an interesting story. So previous explorers had outlined a 6 kilometre long gold system here. What I can tell you, those holes are colour-coded by gold grade. So there's a few decent hits through that corridor, no drilling deeper than 120 metres through that corridor, so very shallow drilling. And what they outlined was a profile that had absolutely no gold in the top 20 metres. So this was very obviously, when you looked at the data in 3D, it was a heavily depleted or leached zone sitting directly below surface. So you might say, well, that happens everywhere, but it wasn't recognised by previous explorers. So when they came and looked at the gold anomaly that sits to the south of Fremlins, they came through this area. That's a 3 kilometre long, reasonably coherent gold anomaly, pretty handy, up to 100 ppb gold in some of those samples. They came through here and drilled 7 metre deep drill holes across this entire 3 kilometres, didn't get any gold and walked away. When you look literally a kilometre to the north and realise there's no gold in the top 20 metres, it's very fast you realise that this is an ineffectively tested target. And when we look back at our historical data, 70% of all the holes ever drilled across that entire 2,500 square kilometres are shallower than 10 metres. So we think if we can prove that this area has been ineffectively drilled, it may open up a lot of the other areas that were thought to be effectively tested to modern exploration. So we drilled 2 lines across the northern end of that gold anomaly, and this is the results of what we did. So the black sort of bracket there just shows the outline of where the surface gold anomaly was, and those are the 7 metre deep RAB holes that were drilled over that target. What we then did is drilled a series of 80 metre spaced air core holes over that area, right down to basement, and outlined a coherent plus 100 ppb gold anomaly that's over 250 metres wide. Now this is very coarse drilling, 80 metre spaced on a very thin and stripped profile. So what we've gone down now is we've got the rig back literally last week and infilled this area where we could, down to 20 to 40 metre spaced. And the idea there is to try and hit the high grade core of that gold anomaly, which we can then follow to depth. But the really exciting thing here is we've proven that shallow drilling in this part of the world, if you don't know where you are in the profile, can be fundamentally leave behind major gold systems for future testing. So a really exciting result there. So since July, we've been pretty flat out. The guys have drilled over 17,500 metres of drilling, which is not bad for a team of 4. They're literally packing up now and coming home for a hard-earned rest. We've got results back from Fremlands, but we have multiple programs still waiting for assay results, which we think we'll see now between literally now and to January next year. So we're watching those with interest, and not a bad time to be looking at Hamelin for potentially delivering some pretty interesting drill results. So I'll wrap it up there. If you'd like to know anything more about Hamelin, feel free to come out and speak to us at the booth. And certainly if you're looking for a gold exploration story where potentially the success is a substantial increase in our market cap, keep an idea of keeping Hamelin on your watch screen, and feel free to reach out and contact anytime you'd like. Thanks very much.
Well done, Pete. Pete's been here or been with us for a couple of years. I don't think I've seen you quite that happy. No, looking pretty happy this year, Peter Bewick. Go and have a chat with him. Right, we're going to shake up our thinking a little bit on the powering of the future next. So we met Iggy Tan earlier on today. He's got a pretty formidable reputation as a lithium industry trailblazer. He is now blazing a trail in something called salt battery technology.
Thank you, Chrissy. So you probably woke up at 3 a.m. this morning and wondered, what is the future of grid storage batteries? No? Well, there you go. Firstly, I'm going to talk about solid state technology. So everyone's heard about lithium ion batteries, solid state technology. Does anybody know what solid state technology means? So I'll explain it to you. So in a lithium ion battery, you've got a cathode and you've got an anode. And in the middle, there is a liquid electrolyte that lets the lithium go from the cathode to the anode. And the liquid electrolyte is actually flammable. And so the industry is trying to remove that liquid electrolyte and replace it with a ceramic piece that allows the lithium to go back and forth without the liquid. It's called solid state technology. So that's the future of lithium batteries. Who's got an EV? Well, one of the concerns is this, right? When a electric vehicle goes up, it's virtually impossible to put out. And the reason for that is because it generates oxygen at the cathode end of the battery. It's called thermal runaway. And virtually, you just have to let the battery burn out. So in a normal fire, if you douse the fire and remove oxygen, the battery goes out, the fire goes out, but in a lithium battery, it's virtually impossible. The other thing people don't realize with lithium batteries, there's a limited temperature range. So it only operates between 15 degrees to 35 degrees. In fact, when it gets very cold, like 0 degrees, your battery drops to 70% capacity. So that's one of the concerns with lithium batteries. It also generally lasts about 8 years, even less in your iPhone. So there is a limited life of these batteries. And then we see the insane rises in lithium prices. So lithium has gone up 3 or 4 times in the last few years. So that's a concern for the lithium-ion battery industry. Cobalt is another component of lithium-ion batteries. And there's ethical concerns about cobalt because 70% of cobalt comes from the DRC and there are child labor issues and so on. The other thing is that 90% of graphite in a lithium battery comes from China. So there's geopolitical risk involved in graphite. And then finally, copper. There are 2.5 times more copper in an electric vehicle compared to your normal petrol vehicle. And there's enough studies that show there's not enough copper mines being built to even service the EV market. So is there a battery that is actually fireproof more than 15 years life, operates in a large temperature range without any lithium, no cobalt, no graphite, no copper, and no manganese. Well, introducing you to the Serenergy battery, which is a sodium chloride solid-state battery. The technology was developed by the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. Over 8 years, they spent 35 million euros, and we have a joint venture to commercialize this technology. So, essentially salt. Now, we don't have a liquid electrolyte, we have a solid-state technology, so we have a ceramic piece. Therefore, it's totally fireproof. We don't have any, we can operate in very cold climates and very desert conditions. Because the battery operates at 270 degrees on the inside, and you can actually touch it on the outside because it's fully insulated. The analogy is a bit like a mammal. It's got its own heating control. So large temperature range, and it's got nearly double the life of a lithium battery because we use sodium, and sodium doesn't degrade every time you charge and discharge a battery. So we use sodium chloride, your normal table salt. Sodium is actually very reactive. If you remember your periodic table from your chemistry days, sodium just sits under lithium. It's a very reactive material. But sodium is cheap and readily available. So it's lithium free. We don't have cobalt in our chemistry. We don't require cobalt. And the most important thing is we don't have an anode in the battery. It forms the anode when you charge it, and it dissolves the anode when you discharge it. So you don't require graphite, or you don't even require a copper collector. So no graphite and no copper. And then finally, how does this battery work? Very neat technology. So you've got the ceramic piece. In the middle of the ceramic piece is a positive probe, and you fill that up with sodium chloride or salt and nickel metal powder. So nickel is the other component. This ceramic piece then sits in a metal cylinder, which looks like this. It's around 250 watts, same size as a solar panel on your roof. That's what it looks like when you slide it into the canister. And it sits in a stainless steel canister. This is how the chemistry works. Once you charge the battery, the sodium ions migrate across the ceramic piece, the solid state, and it forms molten sodium on the other side. And the nickel is there to grab the chloride that allows the sodium to go. So that's why the nickel's there. So if you take a cross section of that, that's what the molten sodium looks like on the inside. What's unique about it is a self-forming anode. It forms the anode when you charge it, and it dissolves the anode when you discharge it. When you discharge it, the sodium ions migrate back through the ceramic piece, grabs the chloride again, and becomes salt. So that's the technology. How does this battery compare to lithium batteries? Well, we're very similar to lithium iron phosphate batteries. Very similar energy density. But the most important thing is the maintenance cost. We don't have any moving parts in our battery. In a Tesla Megapack, there's something like 26 cooling fans and 2 big air conditioners trying to keep the battery cool. We don't have that problem. And if you look at this curve where our batteries sit, the red bit is the lithium ion batteries, and the top bit is where all the nickel cobalt batteries. These are high power lithium batteries, and these are the LFP batteries. We sit right in the middle where we can produce power as well as energy. All right, our market is the grid storage market. Very simply, today we're generating power with solar panels. The problem is, at night, there is no power coming from solar panels, and you're buying that electricity back, so you may be generating electricity to the grid at 0 cents or 4 cents during the day, and at night you're buying it back at 28 cents. It doesn't make sense. the storage is the solution. So even when more EVs come online, you need battery storage to charge these EVs. So the grid storage market is our market. And essentially we're building these grid packs, 1 megawatt grid packs, to provide that solution. As Elon Musk said, the future growth of that battery division is in the grid storage market, okay? And it's expected to grow close to 15 billion by 2025, some 3,000 gigawatts being built. So we're ready to commercialize this technology, and you can see some vision here of the pilot plant that has been built by the Germans, and they're producing these batteries and undergoing tests. So it's not a concept, we're already producing these batteries and going through the test work. This is a 5 kilowatt battery, but our future is actually a 60 kilowatt product. We're building a 100 megawatt plant in Saxony, Germany. We own 75% of the joint venture. And Saxony is on the east part of Germany, where a lot of the EVs and battery plants are being built. As you can imagine, the plant is going to use a lot of automation and robotics. And Germany is the best place for that. There are a lot of suppliers that supply the auto industry, and we are producing each of those cells at 1 every 45 seconds from scratch. So a lot of automation and technology. This is our first product. It's a 60 kilowatt battery. It's got 240 of these cells in there. And if you take a cross section of it, there are 5 shelves of 48 cells. And what do you notice about this battery? There are no cooling fans, so there are no moving parts. So maintenance is very low. And what we're going to do with these batteries is we're going to put it in a grid pack, 1 megawatt grid pack, fully installed, so that when we deliver this to your site, it'll be just on the back of the truck. We can drop it on deck, and you have 1 megawatt connected to your grid supply in 5 minutes. Okay, so that's our product. And this is some of the vision of our 60 kilowatt prototype that we're building. You can see alumina being added to make these ceramic tubes. They're now being mixed up with a lot of materials to allow the sodium to move through the solid state when we make these tubes. Spray dryer to make these ceramic powder, and then when these tubes are made, we have to calcine it or sinter it at 1600 degrees. And then there is just a quick quality check to see whether there's any cracks in these tubes. And essentially they go into these cylinders. They are then welded together, and then we add sodium chloride and nickel metal powder as these granules. That is the active ingredient of the battery. As I mentioned, they are now welded, and they are undergoing tests under temperature, and then these are now put together into a 60 kilowatt pack. So, ladies and gentlemen, join us and be part of the new grid storage future.
It's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Changing commodities again. We are going now. Do you know that was an announcement, if you are reading any of the media today, there was an announcement out of Mount Isa, and Glencore has decided to close down their mine there, effective 2025. Now, they produce one heck of a lot of copper there. So I suppose the repercussions for people living in that community obviously are going to be huge. But what does it mean more broadly? So what does it mean for the copper prices? What does it mean for people who are about to take to the stage? People like this fella here. Mark, do you want to come up and join us? This is Mark Hepburn, everyone. He's from Castile. What do you reckon this is going to mean for you, Mark? You tell us. Would you make him welcome, please, everyone? Mark Castile, Managing Director. Don't call you Mark Castile, Mark Hepburn from Castile, excuse me.
Thanks, Christy, and thanks to RU for the opportunity as well. Sorry, Vertical Events for the opportunity as well. And yes, it was an interesting article this morning about copper, and I'll talk a little bit about copper during my presentation today, but it's obviously going to get a lot tighter. I mean, the vehicle industry has invested around 12 to 14 trillion in setting up assembly lines for lithium batteries, and obviously the copper involved has already been talked about by Altech, but it's also about the recharging networks that are required for the power consumption, the power to conduct the actual electricity in and out of the batteries. So copper is going to be a very important part of this, if you like, electrical future. So we've got an IOCG up in the Northern Territory, and I'll quickly talk about how it came about, what we've done on it. We've worked very hard. We've got to a pre-feasibility study, and I want to show you what that means for us. There's also gold there. We produce about $100 million worth of gold a year as well, which is a great little bonus. You can see we're not a big company now, 15 million or thereabouts in market cap, but the key to our company is that we will produce downstream critical minerals: gold, copper, cobalt, and magnetite. The copper and the cobalt is obviously a critical mineral here. Copper is not a critical mineral in Australia yet, but it is practically everywhere else in the world. And the rest of the world is stealing a bit of a march on what's happening with copper. So obviously we're working towards a sustainable development for the future, but the key for us is what metal are we getting, what are we getting out, and who can we sell it to? And the answer is our market opens up substantially when you start talking about 99% copper and a usable cobalt product that can literally almost go into batteries in the form that we sell it in. I'll play a quick video which will cover over on our last 3 years of developing this asset to where it is now. We're located in the centre of the Northern Territory. We're about 1,000 kilometres south of Darwin and 400 kilometres north of Alice Springs. We have rail, we have the Stewart Highway, and we have the APN natural gas pipeline running 40 kilometres from our project. We've drilled about 90,000 metres on this particular project, and we have come up with, I might humbly say, what are probably as good or better than anything that's been drilled in this country for the last 5 years. And I've got the assays and the intercepts to prove it. So we've put together, you're looking there at the entire deposit of ore. As I said, the iron ore hosts the deposit. And our mine really is quite simple: 25-metre intervals, 40-metre stopes. We're not reinventing underground mining. This is practically what every underground gold mine in WA does. And clearly we are looking to expand on what we have in our resource, both at depth and to the east. And there's plenty more prospectivity for us there. So that total revenue of 2 billion on a 500,000 tonne per annum mining and processing project, that's all because of downstream pressure oxidation and electrowinning of the metal at the end of the process. You can see there, as I said, 500,000 tonnes goes into the plant and works its way through the crushers. We have an autoclave on site, electrowinning of copper in that green shed, and cobalt down there to the right, and then a CIL gold room at the back. Again, we are producing gold doré, 99% copper, 99% cobalt, and a 96.5 magnetite product that is used in coal cleansing around the world. The magnetite product that we'll produce has already been sold by another company into India, and that sort of leads us to where I'm going with my discussion today. So again, I'll move quickly through this. We have plenty of infrastructure. We have a commercial airport as well as those other things I talked about, railway, highway, natural gas for power if required. We have the Sun Cable solar farm setting up about 230 kilometres to our north. Naturally, we're looking at them to supply us with power once they're up and running. So what I've done here is split the revenue. Our 220, 250 million in annual revenue is split up at the prices we used, which was about $17.70 US for gold, $4.25 a pound for copper, 60,000 US a tonne of cobalt, and about 250 US a tonne for that magnetite product. There's been swings and roundabouts, obviously, since we did the PFS. Gold's rallied to 19.20 US, copper's down at 3.60, 3.61, up a little bit on the Glencore news that Christy was referring to today. So we have a natural hedge in there. You've seen gold rally, copper come off, and that's a great natural hedge for us to have within our project. Two very good metals. The cobalt and the magnetite are really just a bonus, and I'll be looking to sell streams for those to fund this project. Again, an important part of what I'm talking about today. As I humbly said, you can compare these intercept results that we have drilled and assayed with anything, good or better than anything that's been drilled in this country, certainly in the last 5 years. And I'm happily argue with anyone back at the booth about that this afternoon. Again, we're very much simplifying that mining process for the Rover 1 project. And the key here is that down in that bottom right corner, it's that pressure oxidization that produces the end user metals. So we are getting inflow calls from all over the world because that is what people are after. We don't need to send it to a smelter as a concentrate. We've got the real stuff. And the Australian government has strongly endorsed this approach, as you would have read. Again, that's just a plan view of a 3D plan view of our plant. Quite a simple operation, only had 500,000 tonnes per year to generate that significant revenue. And I might say, as per the pre-feasibility study, 110 million in free cash per annum. Pretty impressive. The bottom table is probably the one of more interest. As I said, 500,000 tonnes per year is the annual production, and you've got about 30,000 ounces of gold a year, 90 to 100 million in revenues per annum. 7,000 to around 7,500. It varies a bit, obviously, when we're in different parts of the ore body on an annual basis. Plenty of opportunity around to increase the production of those two elements. And then we've got the cobalt. By producing 300 to 400 tonnes of cobalt a year, we will be 5% of Australia's supply of cobalt. So that really is going to be a great little byproduct kicker for us. And then, as I mentioned, the magnetite product, which we'll sell in India for around about 250 US a tonne. See the total revenues there, 2 billion. You've got the underlying mine profit after costs of around about 700 million, IRRs of 46%. This is a very profitable and manageable project. So, funding our project. Because we've added the pressure oxidation and the SXEW onto the end of the process, it looks like about 160 million Australian dollars to build the plant. But again, the rewards are enormous. So how do we fund that? As we all know, the stockbrokers have gone underground, the equity market's in an extremely bear market. It may or may not remain like that, but let's have a little bit of a look at what we can do with regard to copper. The Australian government strongly endorsed downstream critical minerals, and I think copper will become a critical mineral in this country. So we got that. We're building downstream processing capacity, which is a major push, as we all know, from this government. Regional processing hub, absolutely. We'll be setting up in Tennant Creek, and we'll be able to draw from potentially other sources of ore from all through the region. We'll be using clean energy. Obviously, Sun Cable will hopefully be providing that for us once they're up and running. And as I'm about to discuss, we're looking to attract overseas capital through what we're doing with our downstream processing. It's to get to really to where we are. I think we're capable of coming up with something just with the pre-feasibility study and the results that we've seen. But here's what we're doing now. We've got some metallurgical test work to do for our bankable feasibility study. We've already submitted our environmental impact statement with the Northern Territory EPA. That's already in and being assessed. And we've commenced numerous discussions with financial institutions and end users of our products to get this project up and developed. Government engagement at both the federal and Northern Territory level has been very consistent and ongoing for at least the last 2.5 years. So we'll get through the bankable feasibility study and get to these permitting and approvals and the construction phase in what is a pretty ambitious timeline there that you see. So for our friends at Hamelin who are looking for the elephant, we found him and he's in the room. Talking about copper, and just to put it in perspective, the World Bank, so not a producer or or someone who's determined to, I guess, stand to benefit from saying something like this. The World Bank down the bottom has said that over the next 23 years, in order to hit our net zero 2050 targets, in the next 23 years, we need to produce as much copper as mankind has produced in the last 5,000 years. So have a little think about that. So the electric planet is depending on that. And some people are calling it a bit of a fantasy dream world, but that's just the facts. And that is to get the electricity out of the batteries, no matter what sort of battery it is, into the use of power, and then obviously be able to take the recharge as well down copper, because it is the only viable conductor that we know of. So the federal government has asked us to go to India and represent downstream critical mineral production. We're a $15 million company. The reason we got asked is because we're one of the only ones doing it. We adopted this strategy 2.5 years ago, and not just because it added $1 billion in revenue to our project, but because it is very much the way to go in which we can, and the work we can do in the Northern Territory to value add. And the government is very focused on it. And we will have these critical minerals produced in Australia, domestic supply chain. So India started a little bit late, started looking for critical minerals in 2019. They've got none. They produced about 550,000 tonnes in 22. They need 3 million tonnes a year by the year 2030. So that's about 15% of global supply, which is currently at about 22 million tonnes per annum. So I don't care how you look at it. And again, I'm over in the booth if you want to tell me different, but there's just not enough copper. Right, so I'll be up in India at the end of November, having discussions with some of the largest conglomerates in the country, and that is public information. You can go and check out that AIBX India website. We're working very hard with the CLC and the traditional owners of the land in which we operate. Like everyone else, we're going to need everyone involved in this community to get this this operation up and going, and the development producing potential that it can. We have numerous other opportunities. You're looking there at our 1,000 square kilometres, right next to our Rover project, which is over on the right, which is the project we're discussing. We are looking for those projects there to feed into that infrastructure. We've got a copper deposit, we have a zinc deposit, again. This is simply adding to what we have. Again, I'm a fan of lithium. We found some lithium and niobium in Western Australia. And again, we are committed to both finding and developing critical minerals. So we're looking at lithium targets. The previous owner spent $2 million doing sampling of about 9,000 samples were taken, and lithium and niobium targets lit up all over this. This is in Western Australia. This is a separate project. And again, we're looking to extract value from that. So in winding up, we're developing Rover 1 to produce $2 billion of revenue a year and downstream precious minerals. We're advancing discussions for the funding of the project from the strong results of our PFS. We've got a large zinc lead deposit. We have lithium and niobium targets as our grassroots work. And again, we're being strongly endorsed by the federal government in the way we're going about it. So thank you very much.
Well done. As much as we've produced in 5,000 years. It's interesting, isn't it? I went looking for our next presenter, went looking for him everywhere. Couldn't find him because he's in here dressed up in a suit, which is not his usual happy place, is it, sir? No, this is a geologist with over 25 years of experience joining us. We are travelling back to the west and the Burns Gold Copper Discovery, which is near Kalgoorlie in the Eastern Goldfields. And this man who's leading the charge likes to get his hands dirty. So as I said, this is not his natural environment, so please make him feel comfortable and welcome. This is the MD of Lefroy, it's Wade Johnston. Now this is a really new and unique mineral system and we're going to hear all about it. Would you please welcome Lefroy Exploration, everyone?
Thanks very much, Chrissy, and delighted to be back at Southwest Connect after last year. And I think the key thing here and the message I want to say is Lefroy Exploration is a WA-focused and WA-based gold, nickel and copper exploration company. And I guess this presentation, here I was last year, we were talking about the Burns. We started with the Burns exploration. We had 100,000 ounces of gold resources on the books. Fast forward to where we are now, we now have 1.1 million ounces of gold resources. We have 15,000 tonne of nickel and we have 58,000 tonne of copper in our portfolio. And what I want to go through here with this presentation is how we did that in the past 12 months. And it's both been via discovery, adding to our mineral resources, and secondly, by a fantastic acquisition of a piece of land called a Location 45 near Kalgoorlie. So for the company, this is really about an incredible growth story over the last 12 months and what we intend to do with that discovery and the acquisition and how we're going to grow that further. The usual disclaimer. And here we are where we operate in Western Australia. And I guess we've got three key assets. Glen Isles right up northeast of Wiluna. It's a package of land. It's about 2,700 square kilometres of land. It's on the edge of the Yilgarn Craton. The focus there is nickel mineralisation. It's early stage, it's pending, it's greenfields. So that's part of the portfolio, and you've got to build your portfolio. Second, I guess, is Lake Johnston. Lake Johnston's north of the Emily and Maggie Hayes nickel deposit. And number one, I guess our key asset and the key geographical location we operate and we explore and where our key assets are is Kambalda. So it's in that Kambalda centric area. And it's a fantastic location to be operating, exploring for and to exploit minerals. And I guess on the left-hand side of the screen there, you can see where our assets are, what we've been able to build in the portfolio over the last 12 months. And the key message there is Location 45 near Kambalda. And that's what I want to stress in this presentation. It's about what is Location 45, what is it, how did we get it? And it's an incredible story and it's a fantastic asset for the company. And we think there's an incredible growth story behind that asset. So there we are, we've got the Kambalda, we've got the nickel, and down in the Kambalda area, we've got the gold at Mount Martin, we've got at Burns, we've got the gold and copper resources, and then we've also got Lucky Strike with the gold resources as well. This is I guess our Kambalda focus. This is the flagship project of the company. 635 square kilometres of land. We divided into three key areas. Is Eastern Lefroy, which is wholly owned. That's where we operate and do our exploration. The hatched area there is a joint venture we have with Goldfields. They're a joint venture partner, and also they're a major shareholder of the company. And right at the top there, bolts right onto the northwest side of the asset, is Location 45. One key thing here, and I must stress, is Location 45 is not a mining tenement. All the rest of that ground is a mining tenement, and that's the Mining Act. Location 45 is freehold title. And I'll go through this presentation about what is a Location 45 and what is it. And I guess the key area, this is a fantastic location, close to Kambalda, close to Kalgoorlie, infrastructure, and I guess we're surrounded by major mining operations, both gold and nickel. So, Location 45, and how did we get this? It was a transformational acquisition we did in May this year. It's 76 square kilometres of land. It's freehold, private freehold title. It is owned by Franco-Nevada, who is the world's largest gold streaming royalty company. They are the title holders and own that land. So it doesn't come under the Mining Act. So what we've done here is done a mineral rights acquisition agreement with Franco-Nevada. We've done that through our two subsidiary companies called Hamelin Metals, which is nickel, and Munger Exploration, which is gold. It's a 21-year term with Franco, and we also got a 10-year extension to that. With that, there's no upfront consideration. So we get all this land, prime piece of real estate between Kalgoorlie and Kambalda, prime piece of real estate, no upfront consideration other than a royalty when we produce minerals from that piece of land. With that acquisition of this location and mineral rights, we get a 500,000 ounce gold deposit and a 15,000 tonne nickel deposit. Prime piece of real estate, and it's had a lack of exploration probably at least the last 10 to 12 years. So it's been sitting there, fantastic piece of ground between Kalgoorlie and Kambalda that lacks any exploration, and we pick up a gold mine and a nickel deposit. And one thing I must stress here also, because it doesn't come under the Mining Act, and it's freehold title, there is no state government royalty, so we pay a 4% royalty to Franco on production of minerals. There is no state government royalty, and the Mining Act does not apply to the Location 45. If you want to talk more about the Location 45, come and see us at the booth, and we can talk about the history of where this came about and how it came about in the state as a location. So it's different to your normal freehold we're all familiar with around, I guess, Perth and Busselton, et cetera, et cetera. So, Mount Martin. That's what Mount Martin looks like at the moment. It's a big open pit, it's about 1 kilometre long. Deepest part is about 110 metres where the water is. The last open pit mining was by Ardea Exploration back in 2009. They pulled about 750,000 tonne of ore, about 1.5 grams per tonne, and they hauled it 7 kilometres across to the Jubilee Mill, which is currently on care and maintenance, but Northern Star. So there's a haul road already in place across from Mount Martin across to the Jubilee Mill. It's produced 200,000 ounces of gold from open pit and underground mining back in the 1980s. And it's got a resource beneath it, it's a JORC compliant resource of 500,000 ounces of gold. So it's an incredible asset we've acquired with no upfront consideration. It's had no exploration for the last 11 years. And we see with its endowment of 700,000 ounces, with all the geological characteristics, high-grade nature, we think there's incredible scope to really grow this resource and grow it much bigger. That's what it looks like in plan view. The blue line represents the boundary between Location 45, which is freehold. Then on the left-hand side, that is Northern Star. That's the pit. It's about 1 kilometre long. The drilling to date, and it's a major shear zone that trends northwest. That cross-section BB, it's the next slide, we'll have a look at that cross-section of the system. But it's an incredible system that's had the major focus of exploration. Last drilled about 2012, is in the pit area, but there's limited exploration beyond that pit. And we see scope to extend it along strike and also to find multiple or additional shear zones to the west, east of that system. So we've got planning underway. We've got a drilling program prepared, and we aim to be drilling in shortly in November. And that's about a staged drilling program to really scope out the system and grow this system. That's a typical cross-section through Mount Martin. You can see the pit outline up the top there, the pit shell, and these flat-lying west-dipping lodes. The drill holes are in blue. That's the resource model extending beneath the pits. This is part of the 500,000 ounce of gold contained beneath the pit. There's two main lodes, the main shear, and then there's the east shear below that. Old underground workings still extend beneath that open pit, and we see scope to do more drilling. We can really expand this system and grow the system. But I think the big opportunity, that's what we've got at the bottom here, is what's really beneath. Is the opportunity for multiple shear zones, or these flat-lying shear zones below that east shear? And that's a big opportunity. How do we grow the scale of this system to show it's a really major gold mineralised system in the Eastern Goldfields? Moving along to the nickel, this is the Goodyear nickel deposit, and come out and have a look at the booth we've got out there and have a look at this high-grade nickel system. This is a 10% nickel intersection in one of the holes there at Goodyear. Again, it's incredible to have an asset like this. Goodyear, sitting so close to Kambalda, it's been sitting there, last drilled in 2008. So a resource of 15 that contains 15,000 tonne of contained nickel. It's about 4 kilometres to the west of the Carnelian nickel mine, which is owned by Wiley Metals. And I guess the key thing there is we're planning all this drilling, and we hope to be underway in November this year to expand the mineral system. There's a plan projection of the mineral system, or the resource at Goodyear. The blue line there, that's the boundary between Wiley Metals, which is to the east, and the location 45 across to the west. The green outline there, that's a dolerite dike, that's a vertically dipping dolerite dike, and you can see where the mineral resource is either side of that dolerite dike. The best intersection to date is really this GYD 27 down the bottom there. That's the deepest hole to date, and it's got the best mineralisation, 3.8 metres at 7.31% nickel. And we've got a piece of that core out in the booth if you come along to have a look at that. But it's another fantastic system we've got, 15,000 tonne of nickel, and we see scope to really expand that system at depth. I guess apart from just the Goodyear and the resources, I think we've got this large land package, 76 square kilometres of land. And I think the purple outline there, that's the ultramafic rock. So we've got 30 kilometres of that basal contact of the ultramafic with potential to host more nickel mineralisation. So all the exploration has really been based for nickel at Goodyear, but we see incredible scope to really grow that system and to find additional mineral discoveries, nickel mineral discoveries along that entire belt through there. And I guess the other key thing I really want to talk about and really stress about this area of the world, it's a fantastic area of the world to be operating, to be exploring for and exploiting mineral discoveries. And where we are, that's location 45 in the blue outline. The red lines are haul roads already in place. So it's incredible to have this asset. We've got resources. We think we can expand these resources, but there's already haul roads in place. There's a haul road going north to Kalgoorlie, haul road going south to St Ives, which is goldfields. The Jubilee mill is only 70 kilometres away. We're surrounded by 4 operating gold mills. We all know they need mill feed. And I guess the other key message is the BHP nickel concentrator is only 25 kilometres from Goodyear, and there's already a haul road basically in place from Goodyear all the way to that nickel concentrator. So again, it's just a fantastic area to be operating in. And I think that all works towards, it's a low capex future development of these resources. Timeline, so what are we going to do at location 45? And I guess it's, we're gearing up, we're getting ready for drilling in November. So we've done all our planning, our permitting, reviewing all the data on location 45 and getting ready for drilling. So that's going to start in November, but it's all about a staged drilling program for both the gold and the nickel. And ultimately, where do we want to end up? What do we want to deliver? We want to deliver expanded gold and nickel resources, and particularly with the gold, working towards a position that we can deliver an expanded resource, a greater scale to the system, and optimising this, and can we push this forward towards a development phase. And I shouldn't forget, I guess, Burns, and Burns is still sitting there. We did the Burns resource, sorry. The Burns resource. So we've done the drilling there last year. We announced that this year. So we've got 43 million tonnes with 500,000 ounces. So half of our gold resource inventory is sitting at Burns. We see as incredible scope to really expand this mineral system into, this is a porphyry style gold, copper, silver, molybdenum, cobalt mineral system. So we think what we've found at Burns at this stage, Burns Central, we think that's just a component of the larger overall system. That's a magnetic image. You can see that big, beautiful donut shape, that circular feature. Within there, there's the Burns intrusion. The Burns, where we've been making the discovery is outboard to the east of that system. I guess, Lefroy, on the corporate overview, the board, a great board, Gordon Gold, mining engineer, myself, geologist, Mike Davies, banking and finance, Tara French, another geologist, and Chris Hesford, who's here with us, Ardea Exploration Manager. And that's the team at Mount Martin earlier this year when we announced that acquisition. On the other side of the screen, the corporate details, we had 196 million shares on issue. We recently did a highly successful capital raising. So we're cash at the end of September quarter, we've got $5.4 million, and our substantial shareholders, Noontide Investments, the LEX board, and Goldfields are our major shareholder. Between those three, about 40% of the company's held by those big 3 shareholders. And lastly, I guess the summary. I guess the key message here is we've had a transformative acquisition of this location 45, which has really propelled the company and advanced the company and given us a great opportunity to expand our resources. And a fantastic area to be operating in, Kalgoorlie, and a great team to drive the exploration forward. Thank you.
just make sure. Go, look back, Wade, look back. Give it the shot she wants. She wants the grinning, I am a winner. That's it. Work it, Wayne, work it. Oh, Wade, sorry, work it, Wade. I was going Wayne's World, then it's Wade's World. All right. When you said burns too, it reminded me, this is actually a burn that I've got underneath my hand here. And I was thinking I was pretty badly off until I met a fellow up the back there. Tomorrow you're going to meet Jeremy Barr. He's from Reach, literally speaking Reach with his hand. Have a look underneath Jeremy's hand and see the little stitch work that he's got happening there. It's very, very impressive. Now, I love this next human being that is taken to our stage up here. He's ridiculously capable. He has got years of experience beneath his belt, management and early development of mining operations. He's currently the mining director of ASX-listed company VRX Silica Ltd, who are next up on stage here at Southwest Connect. This is Bruce Maluish. Now, under his leadership, he's actually pivoted VRX. They've established 5 silica sand export operations, and that's for export to the Asia-Pacific glassmaking and foundry industries. And I believe, from what I've been watching lately, I've been watching him on YouTube, and he's been fielding weekly requests from international companies looking for his sand. So I'm sure he's got a lot to talk about. He's fielding them off, and every time I saw him talking about it, he had a big grin on his face. It's a horrible position to be in. Would you please make welcome Bruce, everyone?
Thanks, Chrissy. I'll talk to you a little bit about silica sand as a product, and I'll talk about some of our projects, and I'll talk about our company, how we're going to develop these silica sand projects. But this is an interesting comment. And the main reason that sand is so critical to modern cities is concrete and glass. So both require significant amounts of silica sand. So it's a product that you're surrounded by and don't even consider it really. You know, in the house, you've got the glass windows. You don't look out through the window and think, oh, that's 75% silica sand, but it is. Mirrors, tiles, insulation, many of the products that you use, your TV screens, LCDs, the thin film on the front, the backing plate, and then you got, you know, potentially solar panels on your roof, and they all require a significant amount of silica sand, but it's an incredibly diverse market. And incidentally, none of these products are made in Australia, which we're also trying to change that as well. But in your car, not just the glass that's in your car, and it doesn't matter whether it's an electric vehicle here, the same amount of glass, LCDs, LED lights, maybe you got a sunroof, the paint on your car. You notice the quality of the paint these days on Mazdas and also Teslas. They use the same type of paint now, and they're very high silica baked paint. It's a very durable product. Rubber tyres, silicon rubber. People forget that silicon rubber includes silica. So it's a product that is used by an incredible amount, 50 billion tonnes a year. 49.5 billion of that goes into concrete. And therein lies the problem, because all the other producers are trying to share on the other little bit of silica sand that they can get a hold of. So the glass manufacturers are actually missing out on some sand deposits that can be beneficiated to the quality they require, because the concrete guys are getting first dibs on it. Now, most of the stimulus spending going on in Asia at the moment is infrastructure. Infrastructure equals concrete. It's the main reason why the iron ore price is so high, because of rebar for concrete. So it's created this issue where there is a shortage, particularly in Asia, and most Asian countries have recognised that it's a shortage, and in fact have banned exports of any silica sand. There's a bit of illegal mining goes on in Indonesia. Vietnam is probably the last country that's allowed any exports. Malaysia has a permit for about 1 million tonne a year. That's into a market that uses 140 million tonnes a year for flat glass and container glass. So it's become an issue in Asia. We've got lots of it here in Australia. We're really aiming, our market is the foundry industry and the glass industry. And the glass industry, particularly flat glass and container glass, as I said, it's about 130, 140 million tonnes a year. One of our products, one of our projects, Boucher, can produce a quality glass that can make ultra clear glass, which is a piece of glass that goes over solar panels. And you can imagine that's a market that's growing at 30% per year. In fact, the biggest bottleneck at the moment in producing solar panels is the piece of glass that goes over the top. It's actually very high tech. One, it's very clear because you don't want to diffract any of the sunlight, which equals power, but also got to withstand hail. So there's only a number of producers of that can produce that quality. The top 10 of them, all Chinese. So we've got a number of projects. We've got 5 projects here in Western Australia. We're based here in Western Australia. They're very high grade, they're very large. 3 of these projects are good for 100 years. So we don't need to go looking for a whole lot more sand. We've got about 1.4 billion tonnes. And a couple of our lead projects got 200 million tonnes, which is good for 100 years. So when we selected these sites, they were selected for particular reasons. Number one, they're granite-based sands. So mostly they're eroded from the Darling Scarp, which is granite, and they're wind-blown, leached and bleached. So they're good quality, but they're also on unallocated Crown land. So there's only 2 stakeholders, that's the state and native title holders. We dealt with the native title holders, we've got agreements in place, but we haven't finished with the state yet. We're dealing with the EPA, and I'll get to that. But also they're very close to infrastructure. So they're all close to Brand Highway. The one at Esperance, not so much. It's about 100 k's east of Esperance. But otherwise they've got railway lines next door to them as well, which have got connections to the ports, because ultimately this is a bulk commodity that needs to be exported. They've also got gas pipelines in there. So the key here is these are very long life. And also the advantage of that is when we do talk to potential offtake partners, we can talk long-term contracts. So we have no problem committing to a 10-year contract. So we've got a number of mining leases and we're working on the process for environmental approvals. Arrowsmith North, 200 odd million tonnes, 270 k's north of Perth. It's got a rail connection to Geraldton. We're looking to export out of Geraldton. Mouchet, also 200 odd million tonnes. It's just about 50 k's north of Perth, got a railway line next door to it, connects to Kwinana. So these are our lead projects at the moment. Arrowsmith North is leading the pack, and this is the one we're chasing environmental approval. So we've finished exploration, we've finished metallurgical test work, we've done process circuit design, we've done engineering, all the way to the point of detailed engineering ready to build a plant. So really we're poised at the moment. As soon as we get environmental approval, we're ready to go. Water is a critical component to sand processing, and we're accessing the Yarragadee. We can get about 90 litres per second out of that. We need about 50. So we've got plenty of water. We've already drilled the bore and tested it, and there's an application in there for extraction, for abstraction, and that'll be subject to EPA approval. Brand Highway's next door. We've got a hybrid gas solar power supply, probably less solar, maybe wind, but we're working on a solution here where we can access gas directly from a gas wellhead, so there's no transport cost for the gas, and then a 6 kilometre long power line down to the project. It's probably the cheapest power solution you could possibly get. Where we are, it's called Quongan Heath. It's about waist high. It's predominantly banksia and a few grasses and sedges there as well. And what we've done is develop this, what we call VDT, where we use a modified bucket on a front end loader where it takes up a sod of earth that is 3 metres by 3 metres by 400 deep. The root systems on all these trees only go 200-300 mil. So if we can take 400 mil out, we keep all the topsoil intact, all the critters that are in it, and the root systems for all these plants. So it is the best possible rehabilitation solution in this type of country. Environmental, we're a long way down the track, but we're currently at the point where we are compiling a response to submissions. And these are submissions that were submitted during the public environmental review period, which finished in July. We got comments back from the EPA last month. We're compiling the response to that. We'll get it lodged hopefully within about the next week. And that moves us on to the next stage, where the EPA can then assess our responses. Unfortunately, a lot of it is out of our hands at that point, but at least it's moving forward. Maluish it'll follow Arrowsmith North. It's a higher grade, but Arrowsmith North gives us the opportunity to set a number of precedents. One, the VDT for a start, but also the size of the project, which the EPA haven't been confronted with before. So it sets a number of precedents that we hope will make it faster for us to get approvals at Maluish. All the environmental studies that we've done at Arrowsmith North, we've repeated at Maluish, including a few extra ones. So that process is about to be started with a referral. We think we've got plenty of data for Maluish as well. The mining lease has been granted, but this can produce very high quality sand, and it's worth probably 30-40% more than Arrowsmith North per tonne. It's once again, the key to this is not so much the taller Banksia trees, which can be propagated. You've got to be able to deal with the grasses and sedges. They're the recalcitrant species here. They're the ones we want to deal with. So once again, that's suitable. It's a simple process. The key to this, strangely enough, is attritioning. Now, attritioning is where you've got an agitated slurry and the grains rub on each other and it polishes each of the grains. The cleaner you get each of these grains, the cleaner the final product. And in fact, what we're looking to get rid of here is clay. So the whole process is attritioning, then get rid of all the fines. So it's screening and we're going to use flotation there as well. But it's a simple process. There's no toxic chemicals involved. It uses a fair bit of power, but nothing that can't be managed. It's a 2 million tonne a year plant. Probably cost just north of 50 million. It's really 2 1 million tonne plants that run in parallel. We take our ESG responsibilities seriously, but we do think that the bulk of our contribution that we can make here to ESG is at the planning stage. So we've spent quite a bit of time at this point making sure that we've got good communications with Indigenous groups. We're looking at trying to reduce our power footprint and really trying to use good sustainable mining methods as well. So we think it's the bulk of it will be at this point. Australia is the largest exporter of silica sand in the world. Now, the bulk of it comes from northern Queensland, Cape Flattery. It's owned by Mitsubishi. It's been running about 50 years, 2.5 to 3 million tonnes a year. Depends on how many cyclones they get through there. Most of the cyclones that cross the coast in Queensland happen to cross right there. Here in Western Australia, Albany and Kemerton are both owned by Tochu. And they do between them about 500,000 tonnes a year. And Hanson Industries exports some sand out of Kwinana as well. That makes us the biggest exporter. So it is, once again, it's a precedent. They are all very large corporations, and it's extremely difficult to find out how much production how much they actually produce, because even Cape Flattery barely cops a mention in the Mitsubishi annual report. We've got a few other initiatives. Last year, and it'll be the same this year, we were published in the Critical Minerals Prospectus, which is produced by Austrade. Every time there's an Australian trade delegation somewhere, they distribute this. We know where the trade delegations are got, because within a week or two, we get inquiries from that country. So, and we get inquiries almost weekly. We've got a grant from the state, the Innovation Attraction Fund, for $2 million to investigate the production of flour and a silica flour, which goes into the production of LCDs. We've also just been granted a geothermal energy permit at Dandaragan, and we're engaged with a group at the moment who can supply the technical know-how to get that up and running. We ultimately want the energy and or potentially hydrogen. VDT, we also want to trial it at Neoshay. The board, very experienced. We're covering sort of corporate affairs, production issues, exploration, commerce, and marketing. Our marketing manager is a Korean lad. He's based in KL. He's been involved in the buying and selling of silica sand for about 19 years. We've probably got the best market intelligence of anybody who's looking to get into this particular industry. We're currently market capped at about 56 million. We've got a bit of cash in the bank. We're not burning a lot at the moment while we're seeking environmental approval. So eventually we'll get some of these into production. We've got a very large resource, going to be a long time there. We're in the Midwest, so we've got hydrogen projects that are surrounding us. With the very long-term raw materials, there's potential for glass making down the track. And we'd really like to be making solar panels here in Western Australia. That's a long-term aim, but it's the right place to be doing it.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I was waiting for the applause. Thank you very much, sir. Been busy. Cheers. Go and have a chat with Bruce afterwards. Now, we're talking Burley Minerals next, a very well-established exploration and development company with strategic assets located within the globally recognised Tier 1 province of Quebec, which we've talked about already today. So some more interesting things to come out of Quebec, including this actual man himself. Oh, no, you're Canada in general, aren't you? Canadian? You're not Quebecian. Canadian. Oh, so
Quebec or Quebecois. It's Quebecois.
So you're
But I'm
Quebec.
Canadian, but I'm not Quebecois.
Not Quebecois. Thank you for clarifying that for us today. So we're West Australia, not West Australia. That's interesting. I like that. Okay, right, we're talking Burley Minerals. As I said, well-established exploration and development company. They've also got bits and pieces here to look at in Western Australia. Their tenements as prospective for lithium, iron ore, you've got base metals. And recently, it was interesting, they had some mapping recently, didn't you, at Chubb?
That's right.
Was it? You identified 6 new potential drill, and the word went up, just drill here immediately. So I'd like to hear more about this. Would you please make welcome, everyone, the phantasmagorical Stewart McCallion.
Chrissy, thank you very much. Lovely to be here today at the Southwest Connect. So, Chubb Minerals, or Chubb Lithium rather, Burley Minerals. Let me get on with it. Disclaimer, of course, we have a few assets outside of Chubb Lithium in Quebec, including some properties here in WA, Gascoyne included, some prospects for lithium and base metals, but also some iron ore properties in the Pilbara and in Yurcoyne, which is just north of Perth. However, Chubb is the focus of our work, and that's in Quebec. A little bit more about the structure. We've closed in at about 16 million market cap, about 100 million shares on offer. The board comprises Brian Dixon, an experienced company director, Jeff Brill, a business leader and ESG specialist in Perth, and of course, Dave Crook, who is here today as well. Dave is an LCT pegmatite expert. So if you want to learn about LCT pegmatites, speak to Mr. Crook. My name is Stewart McCallion. Thank you very much. I'm an engineer. I've got about 25 years experience. I joined Burley Minerals at the beginning of August, just in time to get into Chubb Lithium. But a little bit more about where the lithium price is going. We are obviously very bullish. We're recognizing that there's a bit of a lull at the moment, but the outlook is robust. We foresee that there is going to be an ongoing shortage of supply, and I think I can echo what Ken was talking about earlier on and suggesting that there is increased demand lack of supply, we think there is going to be a price rebound in the near future. Quebec, it is positioning itself to be a battery minerals hub. You have the right resources, that is the mineral resources. You are geographically well positioned, and there is an abundance of infrastructure available to us, including the Canadian National Railway that leads to ports in Montreal, Trois-Rivières, and Quebec City on the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is one of the busiest shipping channels in the world. So good infrastructure. In addition, by the way, low cost power for care of the James Bay hydroelectric scheme that was constructed by the Quebecois some 40 years ago. So Chubb Lithium is a mere 25 kilometers from Val-d'Or. Val-d'Or is a mining center, a very strong mining center in Quebec. It's the Kalgoorlie of Quebec, effectively. There's been a long history of gold mining in the area. And more recently, North American Lithium has commissioned their plant. They sent their first shipment of lithium or spodumene cons away in August of this year. So you've got a big community, a supportive community, good infrastructure, support from the government, and obviously good power supply as well. Now, just one other thing, you know, the Quebec government announced last week that it is funding a lithium carbonate plant to be constructed outside of Montreal. That's a $6 billion investment from the provincial government and the federal government to a lesser extent to fund this new lithium carbonate plant in Montreal, or just outside. So again, the chemical plants are being built. Now it's about getting some domestic supply online. As I suggested earlier on, Chubb is a mere 25 kilometers from Val-d'Or. Next door, 10 kilometers away, is North American Lithium. That whole area is a lithium zone. It's our site takes half an hour to get there. We started drilling in April of this year after acquiring the project in February. Fairly rapid approvals process, by the way, to get the drilling moving. I was very happy about it. There was a cessation of drilling earlier in the year because of the fire bans. We had to pull our kit out, but as soon as the heavy equipment ban was lifted in early July, we were drilling the next day. And that is the factor of obviously being right next door to the bustling community of Val-d'Or. Again, with all the service providers, drilling contractors, miners, and of course, professional staff to support our exploration program at Chubb Lithium. So what we have at Chubb is there's two systems that we're looking at. Now, initially, we're looking at Chubb Central. Chubb Central is a series of spodumene-bearing pegmatite dikes. So let's call that the Chubb Central mineralized zone. That is sticking out of the ground at surface, and that's sort of, there's about somewhere around 600 meters of known strike. It starts to dip a little bit to the south under cover in terms of some glacial till over that area. It gets a little bit wet, but the spodumene is sticking out of the ground. There's a series of dikes, parallel dikes, sub-parallel, basically sub-vertical rather, and it's roughly 600 meters of strike length, and roughly the mineralized zone, as we know right now, is at least 250 meters wide. We are looking for more. We're looking for more parallel dikes and looking for extension of those dikes to the south. It's at the moment, as it stands, it's open. We've completed 9,000 meters of drilling at Chubb so far this year. After the July drilling program finished, wherein we finished up to 5,200 meters, we commenced a geophysics program to explore other areas next to Chubb Central. But in addition, we did some more mapping and geochemistry at Chubb North. Now, at Chubb North, it's a series of large pegmatites that are sticking out of the ground. This has not been explored before, as early interpretation of the geology suggested that this was barren ground. However, with the advice of Dave, the LCT pegmatite, we went back into Chubb North. We did some more mapping. We took the XRF with us. We took a close look at the geochemistry, and the data suggests that Chubb North is fertile ground. So we changed tact slightly. We got the permits together, and we started drilling at Chubb North, and we finished a series of holes at Chubb North to date, up until about 2 weeks ago, wherein we had to pull the rigs because it's moose hunting season in Quebec. So just a little bit more. This is Chubb Central, a series of pegmatite dikes, again, a mineralized zone approximately 600 meters wide, or long rather, up to 250 meters wide, still open to the north and the south, more exploration targets to the south and the east as well that have been identified by the geophysics. There is a resource there. There is something that we can do with this. It's only 3 kilometers from a sealed road and from a hydroelectric power as well. Again, 30-minute drive from Val-d'Or. No need for large infrastructure development here, folks, because it's right next to all the resources that we require to bring project into fruition. Again, another snapshot. Again, here at the area that we're looking at into the north is Chubb North. That figure to the south is some of the geophysics that we identified as part of this earlier program. But very prospective targets. We're going to get back into it and drill it very soon. Chubb North, this is sort of very exciting for us. Again, the geochemistry is very compelling. Again, this area we considered at the beginning, which didn't we thought was barren. Now it is fertile ground. We have drilled it. We've done an early preliminary drilling program at Chubb North. That work, or the data, is now being analyzed. We are now planning a more comprehensive program over Chubb North. The pink outlines are spodumene, or rather pegmatite dikes that are sticking out of the ground. This is around 200 hectares. It's looking very compelling, very prospective. But again, we've only drilled a part of these. We're going to recommence drilling next week, and after the moose hunting season finalizes on Sunday. Just an indication of what we're looking at. That's the drill rig next to a pegmatite dike, or a pegmatite that's sticking out of the ground. There's a plan view of it. Just back up. That pegmatite is the small pink dot on the sort of central east of that map. So we really haven't looked at that big pegmatite that's sticking out of the ground, but it's looking very, very compelling from a geochemical point of view. A few other things, as was said, we do have some properties in WA that are on our books, including Mount James and Dragon. These are up in the Gascoyne. There's some exploration license applications in process. We're going to get moving up there as soon as possible. Again, the focus of the work is Chubb in the near term. I'm flying to Montreal tonight, or tomorrow night rather. Going to meet up with our drillers and geologists over the weekend and next week, and to start planning out the next drilling campaign at Chubb Central, and more importantly at Chubb North, where we're yet to determine exactly the extent and size of this new prospect. So, in addition, we have the projects, the iron ore projects in WA, including Urucoin outside of New Norcia, and Cane Bore and Broad Flat Well in the Pilbara. Very prospective. Urucoin is a 250 million ton, 33% iron project, magnetite, very good metallurgy. We're working to get on the ground there as we speak. That's it. I'm going to keep it really quick, but my booth is just outside. Please come and see me. I'm happy to elaborate on our program and what the Quebec government is planning in the near future. Thank you very much.
You've got 3 minutes up your sleeve. Does anyone have a question they'd like to put to us? No? You have 3 minutes. I don't want you to lose it, that's all.
It's okay. No, I'm happy. Listen, as I said,
yeah.
it's yeah, I'm heading to Montreal tomorrow night. We've got a good position where we are at the moment. Invest Quebec is supportive of obviously these mineral projects getting online sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
They're developing battery plants. They need the raw materials to feed them.
Yeah, I think
So-
last time we spoke, it was the fires in Quebec and things were all happening, so it's good
Well,
to hear that's a bit.
The difference between where we are and obviously and our peers to the north is just the accessibility of our site. Of course, we're only 3 kilometers from a sealed road and adjacent to Val d'Or, which makes it very easy to get exploration work done.
Okay, well, we will keep our ears and eyes out with interest, won't we, Tim? Would you please make him very, very welcome, everyone? I'm very, very grateful, thank you. I'm getting my thanks and all the rest of it round the wrong way. And you know why that is? I think, well, I can hear afternoon tea beckoning to me, but I know we have one more great presentation of Adam. Look at this fellow striding from the back room with purpose. So in July, a couple of reasons for that. In July, this little company signed an MOU with the Japanese companies for a $2 billion nickel project. Happy? Smile. Yeah, happy.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then a month ago, they topped up their till to the tune of $16 million. Still happy?
Absolutely.
Still happy, absolutely. Okay, so there's a couple of key aspects of this business I'm sure we're going to hear more about. We're talking Nickel Junior Ardea Resources. They're rounding off this session, very, very hard at work. And this fellow up here is Andrew. Now, Andrew, I always butcher your last name, so can you just say it for me, please, sir?
Penkethman.
Exactly what your mother and father said. Would you please make Andrew very, very welcome, everyone?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chrissy. And yeah, just like to say thanks to the Vertical Events team and sponsors for putting on another terrific event. And it's my first year at the Southwest Connect event, and coming here, I believe about 30 of the staff are from Fiji, and in a way it's like coming home. I've had the privilege of living and working in Fiji for a number of years, so it's great to be here. Today I'm going to be giving you an update on Ardea's Kalgoorlie nickel project, and Chrissy's already stolen my thunder, but no, great intro. And focus very much on our PFS on the Goongarrie hub, what makes Goongarrie such a globally strategic and significant deposit. Standard disclaimer, this presentation is available for download from our website. So quick corporate snapshot, and I guess the key factor here is we've got a highly motivated, very driven and successful team, and the board alone have 130 years plus of resources sector experience, primarily here in Western Australia, and the entire executive management team and our staff, they're all shareholders, they're fully aligned with all of our stakeholders. We maintain a very tight, disciplined capital structure. As Chrissy mentioned, in a challenging market, we were able to complete a recent $16 million placement, negligible discount, and without any dilutive options being attached. And you know, we value our shareholders, and it's so important that we maintain that capital discipline. The fundamentals for nickel and cobalt have never been stronger, and that's underpinned by the electric vehicle sector. And I was reading earlier this week an article from Row Motion, and September this year saw record global EV sales of 1.3 million, and that was a 23% increase on the same period last year. So despite the current volatility in global commodity prices, the outlook for nickel and cobalt remains compelling, and we're expected to see at least a doubling of the nickel and cobalt demand by 2030. And we're also seeing the demand for ethical and sustainable sources from jurisdictions like Australia and Canada in particular, and that's underpinned by the US Inflation Reduction Act and the European Union Critical Raw Materials Act. And there's been discussion about a premium for ethically and very strong ESG credential production, and no jurisdiction's better placed to comply with that with Western Australia, and it's an interesting area that we're going to all keep an eye on in the coming years. So the key features of our project: all of our resources at Goongarrie are located on granted mining leases, adjacent to existing infrastructure. So that's a huge head start for project development. We do have the largest nickel cobalt resource in Australia and the 7th largest in the world, so underpinned by some 6.1 million tonnes of contained nickel and 386,000 tonnes of contained cobalt. We completed our PFS on the 5th of July this year, and we were able to demonstrate the global significance and strategic nature of this project, underpinned by robust financial metrics. And again, we've been able to demonstrate the magnitude of the strategic partner discussions we've been having with lithium-ion battery manufacturers, OEMs, and globally significant mining houses. And we're thrilled to be able to give the public some insights into the quality of the potential partners we're dealing with in the Japanese consortium, consisting of Sumitomo Metal Mining, Mitsubishi Corporation, and Mitsui & Co Ltd. The key features about Goongarrie and what make it unique of all the laterites around the world are the goethite. So this image represents that goethite. You can break it apart with your hand. From a open pit mining perspective, it's free digs, so that results in low cost conventional open pit mining. We've got very low energy requirement for the comminution circuit to prepare the ore for feeding into the process plant. And then once it's in the process plant, industry leading low acid consumption. So just to give you a benchmark, so we've got the existing Murrin operation also in WA, owned and operated by Glencore. Our acid consumption is about half of theirs. This figure just highlights where the KMP global resource sits in a global perspective. And again, it is a national treasure. You know, it is the largest in Australia, and it enables long-term strategic planning. There are very few of these giant deposits, particularly in Tier 1 jurisdictions like Western Australia. So our projects are located, as I mentioned, in close proximity to the very supportive mining community of the city of Kalgoorlie-Boulder. All of our Goongarrie Hub tenements are shown here in green, and that's been the subject of our recent PFS work and the MOU with the Japanese consortium. But that's not all. We've also got that internal pipeline for future growth shown in the projects in red out to the east. So we don't need to do any M&A. We've got the project pipeline internally, and this tenement portfolio has been put together over the course of 25 years, and all that hard work and dedication from the teams all coming to fruition. And importantly, we've got access to critical deep sea ports and other infrastructure on the south and west coasts of WA. Here we're looking at an inclined view, and all of the ore reserves for the Goongarrie Hub deposits that were evaluated in our PFS are shown in red, and you'll note the proximity to road and rail. And most importantly, you can see the ore reserves, so over 1.3 million tonnes of nickel metal. So that's more than enough nickel to create over 32.5 million electric vehicles using nickel, cobalt, manganese, 811 cathode chemistry. And that's just the beginning. There were 3 deposits that we didn't even consider at the Goongarrie Hub in the ore reserves. So there's a mine life already of 40 years. This is a project that's going to be going long after I'm gone. And as I mentioned, it really is a national treasure. And it's underpinned by significant resource definition drilling that gives us the confidence in the deposit and the metallurgical test work that's been undertaken as well. This is a cross-section now through Goongarrie South, and the key feature here is most laterites are sort of 20 to 40 metres in thickness. They're sub-horizontal, but because of preferential weathering in our unique geological setting at Goongarrie, in places we got intersections of over 100 metres at plus 1% nickel. So you just don't see this with other nickel deposits. And if you combine the features of the goethite that I mentioned earlier, you know, that's why we're so proud of Goongarrie. Now this is the highway deposit. It's currently the northernmost deposit contemplated to be part of our Goongarrie Hub production plan. And you can see the mineralisation extends for, you know, well over 1 kilometre in width in the east-west direction. But also the photo at the bottom right, highway is going to be our primary source of mineralised neutraliser. So we screen it. The dark reddy brown iron-rich material reports to the fines, and then the coarse white fragments are the magnesite, and we use that as neutraliser. So the fines go into our atmospheric leach circuit, but the magnesite also gives us additional nickel and cobalt credits. There's no other operation in the world using that, and that's research and development IP that's been identified by the Ardea team, and it will contribute about 16% of our nickel metal per annum, year in, year out, at negligible cost. So just the continuity of the deposit, every resource, the geology is the first and most important building block, and that's not because I'm a geologist, that's because if the geological model's flawed, so too is all the other work that flows from that. And you can see in these stacked cross sections the continuity of the nickel grade envelope shown in blue and the cobalt grade envelope shown in red. And again, this is the same set of sections, but this is the resource block model, and you can note the grade continuity. We've got mineralisation over several kilometres, and in the case of the Goongarrie Hub deposits alone, collective strike of over 35 kilometres. So the key feature here is our annual nickel and cobalt production shown in the graph on the right. So over the period of 40 years, we'll be producing about 30,000 tonnes of nickel metal every year and about 2,000 tonnes of cobalt metal. And at current rankings, it would only be BHP, Nickel West and Independence Group. IGO's nickel ore reserves are in decline, so it's guaranteed once in production we will be one of the largest nickel cobalt producers in Australia. Quick snapshot now, so you can see the ore reserve blocks at Goongarrie South in the top left, and then our process plant using existing proven technology. And we'll just zoom in here, and just in the interest of time, please come and see Matt and I at the Ardea booth, and we're more than happy to elaborate. But the key takeaway is that the flow sheet uses proven technology successfully utilised at existing operations, both here in Australia and overseas. I mentioned our competitive cost basis and the goethite and mineralised neutraliser contributing to that. So by the time we allow for cobalt byproduct credits, we've got very low operating costs of under $6,000 a tonne. So today the nickel price is about $18,500 a tonne, and that low OPEX gives us the ability to withstand the commodity price cycles. Here are the financial metrics from our recently concluded PFS. You can look at them in your own time, but the key takeaways are 800 million in EBITDA for 40 years. It's a long-lived strategic project. We've also identified a number of enhancements when concluding the PFS, and these will be carried forward into the DFS, but most importantly, it's the reduced residence time. So we'll go from 70 minutes to 60 minutes within the autoclaves, and that'll give us about a 15% increase in material throughput and annual metal production. So it's a low-cost value enhancement that'll be carried forward to the DFS. Here's an image of our West Kalgoorlie office and our West Cal team and Perth-based colleagues hosting a site visit from the Japanese consortium, and we maintain very constructive, respectful engagement, including visits in City of Kalgoorlie, Boulder, Shire, Menzies, Perth and Tokyo, and certainly look forward to saying more about that engagement in the months ahead. This figure just highlights the strategic long life and cash flow generation of the Goongarrie Hub once in production. The ESG credentials, as I mentioned, for the project are outstanding. We'll incorporate in-pit tailings disposal and concurrent site rehabilitation with operations. We also have very competitive low CO2 emissions. If you look at that at about 11.9 and compare that to some of the Indonesian nickel laterite operations that produce 60 to 90 kilograms of CO2 per kilo of nickel produced, we're doing the heavy lifting. So just in closing, I'd just like to highlight the strategic nature of the KMP and the Goongarrie Hub and the growth potential we have, the fact that we enjoy strong stakeholder support and operating in the best resources sector in the world. We've got a quality, extremely committed team, and we also enjoy incredible support from all of our stakeholders and shareholders, some of whom are shown in this image and are here today supporting us again. And without their support, it wouldn't be possible to kick the goals we are, and the outlook for the company's never been stronger. And I'd like to pay particular acknowledgement to Ollie and Julie DeP in Adelaide and wish them all the very best. They'll appreciate the reference. But any of our shareholders, I hope today I'm able to convince new people to become shareholders, and I always make myself available for any calls and any communication, and we always appreciate everyone's unwavering support. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Mr. Penkethman. I appreciate it very much. It's good of you to round out that particular segment. You're just a happy-looking bloke, aren't you? Happy feeling bloke. Yeah.
Got to be just power of positive thinking and staying positive. Life's difficult, but you've got to be happy.
They're two great bits of news for you. Best of luck.
Thanks very much.
Hope to hear more next year. All right. Oh, your question, really. The rest of you can go to afternoon tea, but one of our customers would like a question, one of our investors. If you'd like to, we've got half an hour for afternoon tea, but do you mind answering a question? Here we go.
Not at all.
Good afternoon, Paul Howard from Jared Daniels. Just a quick one. There's scandium in the deposit, and there's another other projects in Australia have scandium in them as well. Have you been monitoring the scandium market, and is there any sort of surprise upside coming down the track that you see coming from that?
A terrific question. So look, we do have scandium in the resource, and we feel the KMP's potentially the largest, or got the potential to be the largest scandium resource in Australia. But we've been undertaking exploration here for 25 years, and when that exploration first commenced, scandium wasn't a thing and it wasn't assayed for. So all of the assays that and work Ardea have done since 2017, we've assayed for scandium, and it sort of averages about 30 parts per million, and we feel it could be a very valuable byproduct stream. And for those in the audience, scandium is another critical mineral classified as such by the Australian government, and we can see a future where it's added to aluminium alloy to give it higher strength, lighter weight. You see that used in an EV chassis, for example, to get greater battery range. So terrific question, and there is a lot of upside. But we're mindful of focusing on the nickel and cobalt, but you're quite correct. It could be a valuable byproduct revenue stream for us in the future.
Thank you for your question, Paul. Team, you've got half an hour, maybe 28 minutes now for afternoon tea. Put your hands together.